Hi everyone, welcome to another video. That's right, we're going back to back with the retro reviews. I've already discussed Raiders of the Lost Ark, which you can check out if you haven't seen that one yet in the link above me. This series, apart from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, are all first watches for me, so I have no nostalgia for this series. And with that said, let's get into Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, one of the more divisive entries in the entire series. This will also cover full spoilers for the Temple of Doom if you haven't seen it yet, so just letting you know, you have been warned.
Hello, lady, we going for a ride.
Is he nuts?
He's no nuts. He's crazy.
To start this review, I'm going to lay down an important note for what I really wanted out of this series when I got stuck into Raiders of the Lost Ark. With this type of movie, I want a little bit of history on the object that they are chasing, a fun villain, and just kick-ass treasure hunting scenes. That is very important here because this is going to explain pretty much why I absolutely love Temple of Doom so much. And I'm going to hit you with a fiery hot take right now. I prefer it over Raiders. Now, getting started, I didn't quite think that it gets off to the same electric start that Raiders did. Although it is still wildly entertaining, we get introduced to all of our main characters fairly early, and we get this really nice back and forth where Indiana Jones and Lao Chi are just kind of one-upping each other constantly at a very rapid pace. It's as amusing as it is entertaining. After that opening sequence, I kid you not, we get one of the most violent movies that Steven Spielberg has ever made. It's definitely a different kind of violence than, say, Schindler's List, but it is very barbaric, and I honestly was not expecting that out of an Indiana Jones movie. I will round back to that point later, but I just think it's really worth mentioning right away because it will be a major talking point. Going back into this film though, it is once again very well shot, has incredible practical visual effects, which like Raiders have just aged like a fine wine. I mean, just beautiful. The supporting cast I thought was better than the one in Raiders, to be honest with you. The one downgrade though has to be the new love interest. I criticized the one in Raiders, but this one makes her look like a top tier romance option. Willie does have okay moments. She's not crazy annoying, but I know for a fact that this kind of character just wouldn't really get put into a movie nowadays because her character kind of plays into some very horrid stereotypes. And the same can be said for how the movie culturally represents Shanghai and India, to be honest with you. The last love interest was better because from the opening you knew that she could handle herself quite a bit and is much more of a three-dimensional character. I feel like Spielberg was going for kind of an opposites thing to give Indy a completely different dynamic to work with. And trust me, that stuff can be funny at some moments, but at other times, especially in the beginning when you're kind of adjusting to this character, it's a little annoying. Fun fact, the actress for Willie is now Spielberg's wife. Just thought that was kind of interesting. Then we have Short Round, played by Oscar-winning actor Ke Huy Quan, the absolute scene stealer in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Shows from the beginning of his career that he just was so promising. Short Round just provides a whole lot of wholesomeness, comedy, and to be honest, badass moments at times. I loved how Spielberg put him into action sequences, and he has excellent chemistry on camera with Harrison Ford. I honestly love the performance and I love this character. It adds so much flavor to this film and kind of rounds out Indiana Jones as a character a little more as well. Once again, my biggest point to why I just love this movie so much is because of how this is pretty much a non-stop adventure. In Raiders, there were moments where they're kind of just chatting for a long period of time, and I know that gives you a lot of context to what they're chasing and a little more to the characters, but to be honest with you, it just wasn't all that engaging to me. And before I hear someone say it, I love talky movies, okay? I've got no problem with films that utilize a lot of dialogue. Raiders just didn't do it in a way that was really all that interesting to me. Temple of Doom, in my eyes, does a lot better of a job of just keeping it to the bare essentials. You have a story and a motivation as to why Indy is trying to find this treasure, and some really solid character progression surrounding just a crazy action-packed adventure. The majority of this film is in one location, but the Temple of Doom is a large space with many things to discover, so the location never feels flat or lifeless. There are bugs, evil cult-like people, and of course the treasure, which, to be honest, wasn't quite as interesting as the Ark in the last film. They're just rocks, and they're just kind of magical, and they help this village, and that's really it. It's also worth mentioning that this is the first Indiana Jones movie that has that iconic moment of him going through that sliding door and getting his hat in the last second. It's a cool moment that I'm so happy to say that I have finally seen. Okay, I think I've danced around this topic enough. Let's talk about the violence and why these choices were made. This was like Spielberg going through his emo phase. He's trying to be very edgy here, and I am sure he gave a lot of children nightmares when this released. This film is surprisingly violent. I mean, I always got the impression that Indiana Jones was very child friendly. Not here, man. You see a man get hung. You see a man get his heart ripped out. You see people getting stuck into a lava pit. You see Indy being forced to drink blood. And lastly, some of the most barbaric stuff that you will see in this movie. Children slaves. They aren't just walking around and working either. They are getting whipped and beaten. There was also a scene where Indy is getting whipped and tortured in front of Short Round, and they start whipping Short Round too. I mean, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, it definitely was a little much here and spawned in America the PG-13 rating. Spielberg has also been on record saying he doesn't like this film all that much because of the choices he made in regards to the violence. He was also in an on-again, off-again relationship with his wife at the time, whom he later divorced, and as mentioned earlier, married Kate Capshaw, who plays Willie in this film. This dark period in Spielberg's life kind of reflected in this movie a little bit, where I'm sure if he was under better circumstances, Temple of Doom would be similar tonally to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think another factor that plays into this was that Spielberg was in a bit of a strange place in his career at the time. He was a household name for making family movies. E.T. had come out before this, the first Indy obviously, and Close Encounters, with the only really violent movie being made was Jaws. The next year after Temple of Doom, he was going to release The Color Purple. He also hadn't yet made films like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, which are all very violent in very different ways, but it's not really a fun kind of violence like in the Indy movies or Jaws. It was more barbaric and real. Temple of Doom kind of wants to have it both ways, and because of that, it probably pushed a little too far over the line for some people. But to be honest, despite some things getting pushed too far, I think the film is insanely entertaining. Also, I do think people go a little bit too far in terms of talking about how violent this actually is. Yes, all the things I mentioned before make this a violent movie, and definitely far too violent for a younger age demographic that this was probably targeted towards, but this isn't like a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. It's not incredibly disturbing that I can't look at the screen at times. I think this film was inadvertently targeted at adults, and as an adult, I enjoyed watching this and could stomach those scenes where it could have been a little bit too frightening for a child. Alright, enough about the violence. Let's get back into this movie, which is so kick-ass. I haven't even mentioned the minecart sequence, which was just so fun and entertaining. I also have to say, did Resident Evil 4 use that scene as inspiration for the minecart section in that game? Because parts of it looked kind of similar, I'm not gonna lie. The incredible ending on the bridge as well also lives up to its name as an iconic action set piece. You feel the tension here, and it was incredibly well shot. I say this in every review for a Spielberg movie because it's just damn true. Spielberg is a master director and truly one of the greats, and this series is just another feather in the cap for him. Also, just one little thing I also found was a little bit rough for this movie was when this decided to use CG. Obviously, this film is from the 80s, so we can give it a bit of a pass, but those scenes have aged quite poorly, unlike the incredible practical sequences. Raiders is pretty much all practical, and it has aged incredibly well with time, while this has one or two moments that kind of just stick out like a sore thumb today. Overall, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is right now my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I haven't seen The Last Crusade or The Dial of Destiny, obviously, because I'm not cool enough to go to Cannes. One day we'll see. But I really think it will be tough to top Temple of Doom in my eyes. It was thrilling, funny, entertaining, and I honestly had a blast with this. Apart from a couple of things here and there, this thing was just so fun, and I really fully understood what makes Indy so special through the Temple of Doom. I'm going to give this film a 4.5 out of 5. I would be all for rewatching this again, and I cannot wait to check out The Last Crusade. So definitely make sure to keep an eye out for that retro review, and yes, I will be talking about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull soon. I have an interesting opinion on that movie right now, so I really look forward to sharing that with you coming soon. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.